is our interview with Zan. Is it Zan Christensen?
Yeah.
Christensen.
Christensen.
Okay.
I guess it's Danish, maybe. Kind of a Norwegian thing.
I don't know, it comes from that whole kind of ending names with son is like the child of, so it's like the son of a Christian or the son of Christian the dude.
Right. But it's not Christian, it's Kristen. Christensen.
Oh, Christensen.
Christensen. Not Christensen, but Christensen. It's like Manfred from A Fish Called Wanda.
Oh, right, I thought you were going for SpongeBob SquarePants though, with the Schmitty Wursman Jestensen.
I don't know that one.
Fish Called Wanda is a good one though.
Yes. Okay, so yes, I am Zan Christensen.
Awesome. I'll splice that in.
I'd like to thank Zan for all of his patience throughout my technical difficulties, rambliness, and being ill throughout this whole interview.
I suppose this is a good opportunity to have a much delayed segue into actually asking what you do with Prism Comics and Northwest Press.
I'm happy to be asked such questions.
Sorry for the delay.
No, it's fine. So I founded Prism Comics. I was the founding president, I should say, with a bunch of other people who were involved back in 2003. So 10 years now, which is pretty awesome. And I was the president for a few years, and then handed off to somebody else, and then was the interim president, which became kind of the president again, and then stepped back when I started doing Northwest Press full-time, well, more full-time. I stepped back again. So now I'm just I'm an advisory board member, and I help out with shows and other things, and of course I evangelize for them and talk about how awesome they are. But I'm not really involved in the day-to-day anymore. So.
Fair enough. So, they're different enterprises, Northwest Press and Prism Comics.
Yes.
Which exactly? Because I hear them mentioned at the same time. A lot.
Yeah,
so
well,
it's difficult to differentiate.
Prism is a non-profit, and it's actually a like federally recognized a charity venture, and so so that's a completely different animal than Northwest Press, which is actually just a business. It's a business with a heart, but it's me trying to make a living doing something that I love to do, and doing something that I think helps people, like helping get people published who maybe wouldn't be able to be published otherwise, and people who are often marginalized. So they're similar in that they have a lot of overlap in audience, and they definitely have similar aims and goals. And Northwest Press, I frequently will just do fundraising things just to help them have an operating budget, because their budget is so small. I mean, relatively small. It's like $25,000 a year, and that's to do like more than a dozen conventions and do all these things that they do and give a grant out. So yeah, I'm always trying to make space for them at the shows. Like if Northwest Press is going to be exhibiting somewhere, I make sure to have a little space set aside to talk about them and make sure people can support them. So, but they're separate. They're separate entities.
Cool. So Northwest is the publishers, while Prism promotes and raises awareness of queerness in comics. Okay, cool.
And Prism does not publish anything. They did publish for years a kind of a guide to queer comics creators, but one thing we discovered over the years is that the internet exists, and people don't need a printed guide. I mean, it's like a yellow pages almost, like a white pages of who's queer in comics, and it's not as useful as it was back when we started out. And so one thing I'm doing to segue into anything that loves, I proposed actually almost a full year ago now, while I was doing a show in Portland, Oregon called Stumptown Comics Fest. I had just had all these revelations that come to me about bisexuality and the origins of homophobia and kind of ways that we could adjust our way of thinking about sexuality and sex for the future, as opposed to how we've been kind of stuck in our identity politics of the past. I was thinking of all this stuff, and I proposed this book as a fundraiser, actually, as like kind of the first annual Northwest Press Prism Comics joint project, where I would be basically asking people to contribute to whatever theme it was, and then they would just donate their pages or do whatever, and then the project royalties would go then to Prism as opposed to the creators. And then I would do a fundraising drive to help pay for costs, and then also to pay creators for their work if it was successful. So in that way, I'm able to actually do something that's a fundraising drive for Prism and make something that has meaning outside of it. Like, it's not going to be one of those projects where it's emblazoned with, you know, buy this because you need to support somebody. You know, it's more like it's a real thing, and it's just we're going to give the money to a worthy cause after the fact. So, yeah, I'm just super excited about that, and really, really happy that that the board, when I asked them, were totally on board with the idea of having their inaugural thing be something that's, you know, it's a subject that's not really, you know, front and center in comics and in anthologies. I mean, I did an interview with somebody the other day, and she asked, you know, have you gotten any, or how did you find the creators who are contributing? And I said, well, you know, it was hard because I've been so ingrained in this kind of gay comics, you know, writ large kind of thing for so long, and the kind of people who are in the anthology and the kind of people who are identified as bi or kind of between categories or defy categories, those are precisely the people who probably weren't as involved with Prism Comics before, because Prism is very much about identity and supporting people who not necessarily define themselves solely by their queer identity, but people who embrace it and use it and kind of tout it and live it, and, you know, don't mind kind of being in the club, so to speak. And so a lot of the people that I'm having the privilege of publishing now, I'm not having the privilege of pleasuring them. The people that I'm publishing in this book, a lot of them are people that I haven't been as familiar with as I should be, because they're really great people, but they're kind of outside of that whole kind of older style way of thinking about sexuality, where you kind of have these clubs, you know, like we're in the gay club and you're in the straight club, and anybody in the middle is kind of like, what are you doing, you know? They're kind of outside of all of that BS, and so they've been kind of under the radar in terms of Prism. So it's kind of nice to just think about sexuality in a completely different way, and get to know a lot of people that I wouldn't have, you know, gotten to know as well.
It's great. I mean, it does show with the people who are involved in the anthology as well, like Sam Orchard, who I adore the work of. I love Rooster Tales. From the get-go, his comic's been about fluidity, and so I'm kind of this, but also kind of this, and my boyfriend's kind of this, and also kind of femme too, so just simple words is deal with it.
I haven't used the word bisexuality very often about this project, and it's partially, I mean, there's some political stuff around it, like people don't, if they're wanting to get away from gay and straight labels in the first place, they usually don't want to just substitute some other word for it. But, you know, there's pansexuality and bisexuality and omnisexuality and fluid sexuality, and but I keep coming back to this phrase non-binary sexuality, where you're just saying I refuse to accept the premise of your of your question, and I'm going to just be outside of this whole system where there's yes and no and off and on, and, you know, so it's great to have people like Sam and people like Leanne Franson and Erika Moen especially, who are just kind of standing up and going, like, I don't want to live like the way you want me to live, and I don't think it's any of your business, you know, like I want to talk about my life, and I want to welcome you in and, you know, share with you, but I want to do it on my own terms and my own way, and with my own terminology or non-terminology. Like Erika just says, she's queer. She says, I'm queer. And all the rest is just details, you know. So I think that's a good way to go.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was going to say Erika especially, I think, is the kind of has the kind of message that this kind of anthology wants to put across, of going, because for years with Dar, she was like, I'm a dyke, I'm a dyke, I'm a dyke, I'm a happy dyke, and then it was, oh my god, this cute British guy.
Well, yeah, the British guy's kind of cute. So.
I have. There are podcasts podcasts I know and Google Hangouts that invite me along to things because the accent brings people. And I don't quite understand America's attraction towards the British accent, but I'm happy for it.
Well, you should play it up more. I think you're a little too Americanized in your accent. You need to pump it up. You know, throw in some little
I get that a lot.
localisms or something.
I think that I learned most of how to speak from Sesame Street. I was glued to it as a kid.
Okay.
And B, I do have a cold right now. I'm struggling through it.
Oh no!
It's cool.
Well, that's an English product, right? Why don't you hold that up and
lockets.
Yeah, we don't have that. I don't even know what that is.
Oh, they're lozenges.
I could have shown that and said I'm practicing safe sex, and I wouldn't have known anything about what that was. So I said, oh, just they package them differently over there. That's fine.
No, those are in the drawer. That's got nothing on my desk. Suppose I could British it up if you really wanted me to, but no one really talks like this.
Do the just put on that fake. There's like there's a thing about the transatlantic accent that was popular in the Hollywood movies of like the 30s and 40s, 50s. Maybe.
Oh God, yes.
That completely imaginary accent.
It's this great thing that I sometimes channel hopping. You can find an old movie that's on like an old black and white 1940s thing, and it's like everyone is like super over the top British, but from different parts of this imaginary England. None of them have the same accent because they're all faking it like crazy. Going, "Hey, say, Charles, shall we go down to the thing now?" That level of where the hell are you from?
And wasn't there an accent that was created specifically for BBC Radio? Wasn't there like that kind of that? There's a particular kind of very, very formal British sound that was actually developed to be a presenter voice that I thought I remembered reading about that, but I, of course, I'm a tourist in your.
It could well be a thing. I've not heard of it. I do know that newscasters speak very presentably on the BBC around here, so it could be a thing. I'll have to look that up. Definitely.
I like watching Doctor Who, and at the end, this very soft female voice will come in, and she'll make some kind of little aside. Well, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Or something like that. I'm like, oh, that's so sweet.
Oh yeah, I've not thought of that before. We do have it being a bit pleasant after an episode of something ends.
Yeah.
Find out next week what happens to Donna. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Aw, it's really sweet. It's cool. You're educating me about my own country.
Well, I'm happy to help. I'm educating bisexuals about their community, so I might as well educate you about yours. I did get a question from somebody who said, have you gotten any pushback? Because, I mean, here I am, kind of, I really am not, but, I mean, the impression could be that I'm swooping in and, saving the bisexuals from their oppression and whatever. I'm really not. The only reason I think that I'm passionate about this project is because I think that I'm learning to set aside these boxes and these notions of us and them and these segments, and I don't feel separate from the people who were involved in this project at all. I mean, even though like my history is pretty gay and without much detour, but I mean I have to accept that there was some detour. And there probably is more in me than I would maybe be comfortable exploring. I don't know. Like if I was raised in a society that just said, just feel what you're feeling and do what you want to do, and be kind and loving to people. I wonder if my trajectory would be different.
If there wasn't the labels to separate in the first place.
Sorry.
I mean, if there wasn't the labels to separate in the first place, if you would have thought of it differently.
Right, if it wasn't like, okay, well, you feel these feelings that are different from the folks around you, and so that means you leave this and you go to that. Like, if that wasn't the way it was presented, if it was more like, oh, you like men, that's great. Do you like women too? Like, if it had been so matter of fact and not a loaded issue where I felt like I had to kind of choose a country, so to speak, then maybe I would have different ideas. And actually, my one foray into heterosexuality happened in high school, in my senior year of high school. So I was 18 years old, but I'd already been out for 3 years, very publicly to everybody. So it was with a friend of mine, and she was a wrestler, and she was incredibly butch and tattooed and had a shaved head and was just totally awesome. And it just kind of all happened very spontaneously with no planning whatsoever, and did not exactly turn out. I mean, it wasn't, we kind of ended up laughing at the end. It wasn't really a hot, successful encounter, I should say. And for years I said, oh, well, that was the time that I knew that I really was gay and not bi. But looking back on it now, it's more complicated than that. Like, I was definitely attracted to her because of the way she was and the way she carried herself. You know, she was a very attractive woman, but she was also incredibly strong and butch and aggressive, and I kind of liked that. So, you know, I wonder if it wasn't that I figured out that I was completely gay so much as I figured out the kind of person that I was attracted to, and maybe there's something there that I, you know, closed off because I got the wrong idea about what it meant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a cool, interesting thing to take. I mean, I'm personally very attracted to androgyny, which does lead to both genders again, as women are much better at being androgynous as well. It's a lot easier thing to ground from going up, so it can be very confusing. I think, yeah, it's difficult when people kind of put it into straight and gay, and then bi as well in some cases, but it's like 3 blocks rather than the actual spectrum.
And there's space between and around and outside all of those categories. Mm-hmm. And people, you know, who go between those categories get a lot of stink eye. They're like, what are you doing, you know? And my kind of theory about that is that gay identity is a protection. Mm-hmm. It's something that was developed to protect against a hostile, broader society, you know? And so it's like a support group or a club or, you know, like a safety in numbers kind of thing. And if you have an entity like that you're a part of, and there are people who are coming and going, and they're going to the other side, you know, that's why people get defensive and they get angry and they feel, you know, threatened. Mm-hmm. Because if it's an us and them and it's a rivalry, you know, however friendly the rivalry might be, if it's still an us and them situation, there's no way to be between those camps and be comfortable or be accepted, you know. And so, yeah, the box idea, like having the bisexual box is so narrowly defined by a lot of people as you must like equally both sexes, you know. And that doesn't work for a lot of people. It doesn't work for almost anybody that I've talked to.
No, same here.
They'll go this way and that way, and they fluctuate. And the whole point is that they don't want to have to think about their quota. And so, like, the more, you know, the more I delved into it, the more I thought that, you know, this whole idea doesn't make any sense. Like the whole Kinsey scale of going from this to that and being somewhere in the middle. I can see some of that, but that assumes that you're going to stay. It assumes that you are a thing as opposed to you are doing things. I don't think that homosexual was never meant to be a noun.
No, true.
And so I think that we need to get away from that. I mean, that's why I love the word queer so much, because it's everybody and everything in a way.
Yeah, it's very all-inclusive.
I'm sorry, assuming that, you know, bisexuality is a lot more prevalent than people think, I think. Like, just because, like if I'm gonna, like, in the clinical sense, I'm a bisexual man, because I have had relations with a lovely lady. So I mean, I'm not a 6. I'm not. If there was a scale, I'm not at one end of the spectrum. And so I imagine most people are in the middle somewhere. So yeah, that I had a point, but I lost it.
No, it's cool. You were saying that, you know, people don't consider like the variance of bisexuality, and I think that the step up that people tend to have from, you know, 0 to 1 and then mysterious grey land of bi, which is all the same shade of grey, must not look at this too hard, or those are confusing, is that people have maybe a 4th and a 5th little section between the two, but they just refer to it as denial rather than anything else, which is, completely, even more rejecting. Something I've disliked seeing in television and comics of certain lesser writing abilities is when a character kind of realizes and comes out to themselves, how they look over their past and go, oh yeah, I've never been attracted to a man before. I must be a lesbian. Even if they have definitely done that in the series.
Right.
Spinneret is a big dislike of mine for that. Because the comic has the main character realize at some point that she's attracted to women. And then she's like, I've never really been with a guy. I've never been attracted to guys. It's like, no, for 6 chapters, you were swooning over this hot guy. You were inflamed with lust for him. Does that mean nothing now? It's like, I think people in writing reject previous relationships too much, and they don't accept that people do change over time,
Right. Or that they're just more complicated than you flip a switch and you go from all this to all that. Not that people can't be all that, but I think that there just needs to be more room for, like, the way that Buffy the Vampire Slayer handled her kind of foray into a same-sex attraction and relationship. It was just something that happened, and it was rooted in kind of her feeling overwhelmed and wanting comfort and wanting, to have some safe haven with somebody, and it just kind of happened that way, and it didn't mean anything about her. It didn't change her whole world. It was just something. And that was really the best way to look at it, was that it was just something. It was just this experience and this relationship that happened. And that so rarely happens because people get so hung up on this idea of, you're tainted, or if you have a little bit of gay in you, then you might as well you be all gay all the way because you're not straight anymore. And that's just so dumb.
Yeah, exactly. It's
like I had a little bit of straight experience, so now I'm not gay anymore. Like, well, I feel pretty gay. But, I think that's just convenience. That doesn't describe all of me.
Yeah. At the end of the day, labels are generally best used just to briefly describe someone when doing introductions. Beyond that, they're not terribly useful.
Have you met my gay friend, Charles?
Yes, just speed up the process.
Right. I believe he likes to be on the bottom. Just to get it out of the way. Would you like a cocktail?
Oh man, I know what you mean. It's the thing that I've read like that, similar to the Buffy example, was Bold Riley, which I just read earlier today. After watching your panel at Emerald City, I must look these people up. And
yes.
The thing I like about Bold Riley is that it does something which the Young Avengers does as well, which is it doesn't actively say at any point, gay, 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 in massive letters. It just happens.
It just demonstrates it. I mean, it shows it rather than just tells it to you.
Yeah, Huckling and Wiccan are in a relationship. Bold Riley is sleeping with some ladies. At no point do they feel a need to go aside and say, well, we've had some fun sex, but it's time that I discuss my sexuality with my own head. Speech bubbles so that you can all see. Gay, 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 gay.
Right. And now I'm going to be in the Pride Parade. Yes.
Yes, if you excuse me, my unicorn's taking me to the parade. Off I go.
Yeah, I love the fact that there are people who don't like that. I don't love the fact, but I think it's funny. I think it's amusing that they complain about how, well, the lesbian angle was kind of like, it wasn't explored. I'm like, well, it looked like she was exploring quite a bit to me. But just because she's not making a big deal about it, the society that she's in is, I think it's a very conscious choice of hers to have to just exclude the whole idea that there would be homophobia, or sexism for that matter. Like it's just refreshing to say, what if that didn't exist in the world and there were still other things to deal with, but let's just get rid of that because it's not what we want to talk about, or where we want to be. So I love that about the book, and some people who are maybe kind of more they want something that reflects the problems that they're seeing in this world. Maybe they want to see how they deal with homophobia, but it wasn't interesting to her. She wanted to just have that not be the whole point of the story.
Oh yeah, definitely. And Boulder Alley is a book about this Lady Conan going around and fighting magic and mystics and things and just being pretty hardcore. It's not about, you know, a discourse into lesbianism and the fears of society around that. You know, there are other... Right. And the point is, there are other books out there for that. You know. Oh
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's fascinating too. But that was one of the questions. I did a panel about queer issues in gaming.
Right.
And the question came up about, like, well, do you include homophobia in your world that you're creating from scratch, or don't you? And I've always been of the opinion that I would rather leave it out, just because, you know, it's fun to play out those scenarios and those kind of have those power fantasies about, like, somebody saying to your incredibly capable sword wielding, you know, warrior, you know, oh, you're gay, and then have just, you know, slice their head off. So that's kind of fun. But I mean, in general, I would rather explore, you know, not the small minds of the people around my characters, but the
the characters themselves
aspiring to do and what's going on with them. So I like to just kind of brush all that aside.
Exactly, I agree with them. To say that is such a broad thing for all games. Like, do you want to include homophobic reactions? It's like, well, do you want to include sexist reactions and racist reactions and all other types of reactions? It depends on the world itself and, you know, where these people are living.
Right.
If they're in an incredibly prejudiced place and that's the point, then sure. If they're not and you're just flying around space shooting pirates and things, why the hell would you?
I'll just include heterophobia in my world. And so, you know, people will have to deal with the stigma of being attracted to a gender other than their own. Ooh, shudder.
Oh man, do you remember the Dragon Age forum post someone did about that? Saying,
oh, really?
Oh, it was ages ago. I think it was Dragon Age 2. Someone posted on the forums of BioWare, everyone's hitting on me. It would have been so hard to make an option to turn off the gay. And everyone's responses were like, yes, it would have been hard to redo all the dialogue in the entire game for one menu option. So you have to not deal with people finding you attractive.
Right. Oh, how terrible.
How horrible. People find you cool? Oh no, what a travesty. You're going to have to turn people down. Especially in games like Dragon Age, like, Zevran just likes to hang out and have fun. I think if you turn him down to have sex with him, much as he enjoys sex, he'll probably be fine.
He'll get over it.
Yeah, he'll find someone else to do.
Yeah.
It's like super sexual. Saying that, the point that you mentioned a while back now, though, as biphobia and, like, self-worry and the idea of tainting being a source of homophobia.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting what it also ties in with what I've thought for a while, which is that homophobia also derives a lot from sexism. Because this idea of, like, you know, men have to be masculine, they have to like women and things, and they have a specific idea of what a man should be, and from that, homophobic slurs generally refer to gay men as women. You know,
right, like you're a bitch, you know.
Bitch, and you're feminine.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think I think there's two issues at work. One is like the masculine ideal, and, you know, which is incredibly limiting and horrible for the people who are in it, even like the people who do live up to it. It's not fun to have that be your only way of expressing yourself in the world. But the idea of not being able to accept any variation in that, it's a similar idea. Like, even if you were a completely heterosexual person in your sexual life, the fact that you would demonstrate other qualities in your life that are not about masculinity, you know, if you were sensitive, if you were, you know, interested in, you know, art and theater and whatever, and culture, all these things that are kind of sneered at by kind of a macho image, the idea that you can be somewhere along that spectrum and be unique in your likes and dislikes and your things you're attracted to and not attracted to, that's very similar to the idea of sexuality. So, like, if you're slightly this, then you have to go all the way and be on the other end of the spectrum. Same thing with with your gender identity. Like if you like, if you're not fitting in at the one end of the gender identity spectrum, then they want you to go all the way to the other end, or like don't hang out in the middle. It's not where you're supposed to be. Pick a side, and that's definitely rooted in people's fears about masculinity and sexism. I did get a friend of mine did say that it was kind of related, but sort of not related. That he had heard from somebody in a kind of bisexual group that he is involved with, that they were angry that that maybe I was blaming bisexuality or bisexuals for homophobia, which I think is kind of a misreading of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was going to say they misheard the panel. I think,
Yeah.
In that case.
I mean, I don't think it's any more than you can blame gay people for homophobia, because I think that either way, it's people who have attractions that they're really uncomfortable with, or think they might have attractions and they're really uncomfortable with them. Those people are, I think, the driving force behind homophobia. And whether they're bisexual or whether they're gay, it's not their fault necessarily. I mean, they are making decisions based on who they are and what their lives are like and whatever, and they're responsible for their actions, but they're being driven to that by this culture that doesn't allow people to be complicated. That's what I think. And so it's not the fact that they're bisexual that's the problem, it's the fact that they're not encouraged to be themselves. And the fact that they're bisexual is just, I think it just makes sense to me that they're either bisexual or fear that they are, or fear that they're gay. But people who can live as a straight person and suppress part of themselves are more likely to stay in that mode of denial for a long period of time, whereas I don't think someone who's entirely gay or mostly gay can maintain that for a very long period of time. I think people eventually give up and come out and decide, I'm going to be a gay person now, or they commit suicide, or they do something, or they end up with horrible drinking problems or something, where they're not able to function as a straight individual because it's too much of a denial of who they are. But I think bisexual people who have some attraction to same-sex, whatever, I think that's much more likely that they would be a long-term homophobe. And it's not that I hate bisexuals by any stretch.
No.
So clear that up right now.
It's just trying to rationalize homophobia. It's totally different to blaming some group.
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand it because I want it to go away. I think that this is a big part of it, and I think that the problem is it's such a unique problem, the people's attitudes, negative attitudes about bisexuality, because it's everywhere. It's not just in the straight community. Like, we're used to fighting homophobia with straight people. This is fighting people's kind of entrenched opinions about sexual identity everywhere, because gay people have a big problem with bisexuality. And I think that I'm really excited about the opportunity there, because I think that gay people are likely to listen if the conversation is broached, if the topic is broached. So maybe we'll get some movement with the gay community and the straight community at once and make some strides quick. That'd be really great.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It would be great. Are there any highlights of the featured artists that you have who will be in the anthology, Everything That Loves?
I can't pick. Oh, you should ask me, who's your least favorite contributor? No, I really do kind of single out two Portland-based artists, Erika Moen and Randall Kirby, partly because they do good work, and also partly because they were instrumental in introducing me to a lot of different artists that I might not have known about otherwise, or wouldn't have known were people who would be interested in this project. So it was through them that I got to like Kate Leth and Melaina and I don't have any notes in front of me. But so I'm really happy that they're involved, and that they've introduced me to so many great people. And also, kind of a more recent addition is Leanne Franson, who's a Canadian cartoonist, does a strip called Lillian by Dyke. And she just sent me the strip that she wants to put in the book, and it's wonderful. Because it's this 18-page thing. It's a really long story with all kinds of stuff in it, and it's about kind of straddling this line between being normal, like living the way that most people are living around her, like dating men and going on dates and letting him pick up the tab and all these things that she's so kind of not used to, like giving it a try and trying it on, and how it works and how it doesn't work. And she goes kind of into her internal monologue about what's going on and how her date is going and all these things, and kind of unpacks this whole notion of invisibility and people encouraging you to, like, well, you look nice when you dress up in a dress and you look more feminine, and like all these things kind of coming at her all the time, and she can't seem to satisfy everybody because some people want her to be, to be this certain way, but she's more complicated than that, and she can't just turn off half of her life to freak people out, and so she has no choice but to kind of be, kind of by herself or be with people who are less normal than people around her. Just kind of by default, because people can't deal with a complicated woman, apparently. And I loved it. I'm so happy that she suggested that strip, because it's talking about exactly the stuff that I really want to see in the book.
That does sound really good. I'll look forward to it.
She did that I think she did that originally almost 10 years ago, that comic. She's going to do a full color version of it for the book, which will be brand new. So.
Cool.
Very, very excited about that.
Sweet. It is one of those things that I think I should do an article, Backhanded Compliments 101, because there are some things that people say and they think it's a great thing to like go, and like with that whole thing of, oh, you look great when you wear a dress and act more feminine, and it's almost like people don't realize that, well, it is people not realizing that can translate with certain people to, oh, you look great when you completely deny what you actually want to look like.
Right. Or, horrible. Or like most of the time, you don't look that great.
Yes.
That's the other side of that. Yeah. I don't know. I had this boyfriend for years who I could not get him to compliment me on what I was wearing. This is kind of an aside. But I'd say, how do I look? He's like, you look fine. You always look great. I'm like, so I can't improve. You're not going to give me any pointers, on how I can maximize my good lookingness, because, none of it matters. I guess that's fine,
That's how you get paranoia as well. So, Power Within is now free. What?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Well, online version of it is free.
Oh, yeah, true. You can download the PDF or other file formats. I like that Northwest Press actually has like different file formats available for download. Yeah,
because I first started publishing digital comics through iTunes, through Apple's iBooks app. And I was really excited about that because they had some problems starting out dealing with queer content in their bookstore. And even before they had graphic novel formats you could use, and things were getting, because they have content review and everything that they sell, which is weird in and of itself, because there's no way to be consistent and fair to everybody who's going through that process. And so in early days, they had a lot of problems with stuff that was very tame, like Tom Bowden's adaptation of The Importance of Being Earnest, which had, like some scenes where there was like a butt, like, oh my, so, when I finally, put together the very first book to send to them to see if they would accept it, I wasn't sure that they would, but they've accepted everything I've sent them so far. So, but that's the where I got started with digital publishing, and I really love the experience on the iPad, for instance, because you have your page turns that are really smooth and wonderful. They make you feel like you're reading a book. There's all kinds of things about being able to jump around to different places, and you can embed video and all kinds of stuff. So I've only recently kind of branched out into doing PDF versions of the books as well, so that other people who have Android tablets or Nooks or Kindles or whatever, they can all also get the books and read them. And it's a little different experience. It feels less book-like, but the quality of the pages is still great.
Oh yeah, of course. Quality's gorgeous when you do that.
I'm thinking maybe I should do, this might be opening a can of worms, but I'm thinking maybe I should do a CBZ version. Because I know a lot of people have those kind of readers that read those files, and they've been very popular for years among people who pirate comics. But I think that our audience is such a niche audience anyway that I don't think it would hurt us to say, come on board. For every person who gets a comic illegally, there's going to be people who, just want it and want to buy it and want to support it. And I think that we're, our heart's in the right place enough that people really want to support us and see us do more work. So I'm not too concerned about that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to why the umming and ahhing in the Kickstarter was fine, is because it seems like Northwest Press and Prism Comics are very local, almost, despite being like an internet thing. There's just this feeling of like, hey, these guys are like making and promoting good stuff, and and it's the indie feel.
Yeah.
Even if you aren't indie, because there's loads of books involved.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll get to the point where we're, like a real company. We are a real company, but I'd love to get to the point where people that I know and respect are coming to me and saying, I want you to publish my work. And actually had that happen a little bit with Erika when she recorded. I asked people to record little videos kind of in support of the Anything That Loves anthology and also Northwest Press in general. And she said that she was excited to have her work published by Northwest Press, and that meant so much to me. It was just so great to have somebody whose talent I really respect and admire be interested in working with me as well. That makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
It's been great talking to you, seriously, and best of luck with the Kickstarter. People go check it out now.
Yes, I'm super excited about it. We've already made more than half of our goal, but I would encourage you to check it out. Just think of it as a pre-sale and buy the book, because it's going to support Prism Comics, it's going to support Northwest Press and publishing more great stuff the rest of this year. And kind of give us the momentum to kind of just keep going, keep doing this, because I really want to give people a voice who might not otherwise have that chance. So check out anythingthatloves.com to find out more about the book.
Available from Kickstarter right now.